Okay, good morning and welcome. I've been in Western Australia with Sam Caporn the last couple of weeks, and we're just about to get ready to go home. And I said, Sam, we've got to sit down and talk about some stuff, because there's a lot of people that I know follow us on social media or we meet that still haven't ever really heard of Sam. And Sam's been a big influencer in my horsemanship, particularly over the last 7 or 8 years, hearing him talk about how he teaches, how he shares this information, how he applies psychology to actually training horses. There's very few people in the horse world that talk about how to apply the psychology to the training. I think they're almost two separate subjects. And so I'm really excited to just sit down here for a few minutes and talk to Sam and ask him some questions, because I'd like you guys to hear his perspective. We're pretty philosophically aligned, wouldn't you say, Sam?
Oh, incredibly close, yeah.
And
which is rare.
Very rare, yeah. In the horse world, there's so many ideologies about how to train horses. Yeah. It can be hard to find someone that's completely looking at it from the same perspective as you, eh?
I agree.
So you can actually have conversations and really chew the fat and talk about it. And I know, like I say, you've had a huge impact over how I actually apply the information that I've had. And a lot of that has come from developing this balance of building a relationship with a horse to where the horse likes you and the horse comes running every day, which is always something that's been important to me. I had no interest in being around horses in a negative, that had a negative viewpoint of me. I always wanted to have that relationship, but I also wanted to get something done, and go and compete and feel like I could ask something of my horse without it taking that away, or like that was a negative thing. And I think, for me, because I grew up a little bit more whilst I didn't compete a lot myself, in a competitive environment or people that were in that filter, I've always had that viewpoint of going, well, those are the horses that we're looking at here. And how do we help those horses? How do we apply these principles and concepts to those horses and not just the horses that are recreational? And you've been a big factor over that. So how would you, first off the bat here, how would you talk about, well, tell them a little bit about yourself to start with.
Well, I didn't grow up, didn't have the privilege of having horses when I was really young, but got a bit of exposure through some family friends and that to horses in my late teens, and I ended up meeting a few guys that had some transport companies and stuff that was a bit of an agricultural approach to horsemanship in the day, growing up out in the in some of the bushy areas and having lots of second-hand racehorses and trotters and things like that. And I lacked a little bit of guidance with horses early on. It was just sort of making it as you could, trying to survive every ride. Had a lot of fun though, a lot of fun doing it, but I sort of always felt that I was missing some things, and some videos were just coming out. There was a lot of influences like the Pirellis, and Monty Roberts was just starting to show some different ways, and so I was attracted to that. Met an instructors from the Pirelli system that had come down here to Western Australia, and I did my first clinic with my 25-year-old mare now when she was about 3. And from there I went on, knew that there was probably a better way and there was more information available. So I went to the States, spent 5 years there with the Pirellis in Colorado and Florida. Had some awesome mentors when I was there, like Rob McAuliffe and Neil Pye in particular, which were both 2 Australians that were living there in the US. And I met some other really high world champion performance riders, and that was kind of my journey into trying to understand a different level of, like what you've just said, is putting psychology into applying into kind of my horsemanship that I'd use on a day-to-day basis and still getting something done. And you got quite a few opportunities to work with guys like Walter Zettel, and who, for those you don't know, is a master, or was, unfortunately passed away a few years, a classical dressage master. Wrote a book called A Matter of Trust, and you had a lot of learning with him. I was there a couple of times when Dr. Aaron Miller, who was sort of the first ever real influence in the foal imprinting, has written a book on that, and a world-class veterinarian, and talked with him a lot about the psychology. And Craig Johnson was coming by Florida quite a bit. He's a 14-time world reining champion. I could be wrong on the amount of times.
I think maybe even more now.
Maybe more. Yeah. A very, incredibly
unreal.
Yeah, incredible.
Yeah, very good.
Had a lot of those connections, and then after returning to Australia, I taught the program here, all over the world, Europe, taught fast tracks in England and America, and then over the course of the last 4 years or so, I started to find my own rhythm a little in my philosophy, and really still yeah, just trying to have other influences like Mike Bridges that we've spoken a bit about, more biomechanics, more power, how to apply
physical sequence,
and apply all the things that I understood and learnt from the psychology into really having incredibly well-rounded horses, which is where we're sort of at now, coming back into competing after, just in the last 2 years, after about 18 years, trying to work out how to put all of probably what we're going to talk about here in the next hour
how to apply
it.
Yeah.
So it's been a lot of fun. I love the teaching. I put a lot of thought into being a conceptual teacher, to where people, when they don't, because being here remote, a lot of people that come from long parts away, they don't really get to spend that one-on-one time with you. So if they're here for 3 or 4 days and you give them sequences and you give them concepts, they can then go away and actually become a little bit more self-diagnostic. They can go, the reason that this is not working is because I'm lacking rhythm, relaxation and contact, or I'm not going through my phase order or something like that. And so they start learning how to teach themselves, in a sense, which is what really I like as an instructor as well, empowering me.
Well, and that makes you a coach.
Sure.
Really, doesn't it? You know, like I always say, instructors instruct.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas coaches, you're trying to, there's a deeper level to what you're trying to give somebody.
Yeah.
Not that if you call yourself an instructor, I'm not saying you're not a coach.
But leave them with
just to give a bit of a different. You're trying to get them to be self-sufficient.
Yeah, exactly.
I always say, with my students, the goal is that one day you stop calling. Because as much as I do, I've passed it on.
Yeah.
But I say good luck, because I'm learning every day. So
absolutely.
That's what you want.
Yeah. Like you say, the goal is that eventually they don't need you.
They don't need you.
People go, what about your business? It's like, there's always someone else coming up that wants to.
That's it. Yeah.
learn from you anyway.
And you're the same as me. I always say that my idea of a nightmare is teaching the same lesson every week on a Saturday morning to the same person.
Yeah.
We want people to learn and take this information and grow and progress. So how do we help people understand that you can still have a great partnership with a horse, an empowered relationship with a horse, even though the horse has a job and a focus? How would you explain that?
Well, I think there's a couple of great concepts that Sean and I always talk about. We're both very conceptual, and the way that we deliver information, I think, crosses all disciplines and all types of people.
Definitely.
And neither of us are really righteous about going, this is what you should do. We'll say, this is what I do, or this is what I found works for me, and if you want to take something away from that, then that's great.
That's up to you, yeah.
But one of the ones that I've always used is the 3 elements of I want bonding, I want exuberance, and I want obedience. Okay, and what you're going to find is you're naturally, I think, more drawn to one of those. Like personally, I can't help it, but I actually like a bit of obedience.
Yeah.
I like a bit of obedience in my dogs, I like a bit of obedience in my horses, so that when I say to them, I need you to not run over my kids, and go, the horse goes, yep, no worries.
Yeah.
I need you to not squash me in the gate. Like if we're playing around at Liberty, you can be exuberant, but if you think, right, I'm going to run past and kick my heels out at your face, I might just kind of go, hang on, let's just get a little bit more obedience. It's attractive to me.
For sure.
If I go to a place and someone's got a dog that sits and stays, and it wanders over and it asks for permission to get pat, think, oh, they're really sweet. But you got one that runs straight up and starts humping your leg, or like trying to jump all over you, and they go, oh, he's just exuberant.
Yeah.
I kind of get that they find that all right, but straight away I can feel myself going, oh, I don't really like this dog,
Yeah.
And so when I meet a horse that's got a level of that, then I allow like the exuberance and the obedience, the exuberance and the bonding to kind of like shine through. Like it's just something that I'm attracted to.
Yeah.
And so when you've actually got when you live like in a lifestyle a little bit like we do down here, and we're trying to use horses for different purposes and principles, it's trying to go, all right, when we talk about relationship, I really want a nice working relationship where it's enjoyable and we turn up and play with each other every day. But it's probably putting different elements of it in practice, where you go, okay, for this period of time, I've actually asked quite a lot of my horses in the last few weeks, and so in the off season of my competing, or when I have a free Saturday just to play around in the round pen or anything, I do some things that increase their exuberance and increase their bonding.
Yeah.
Go out and scratch on them, give them a bunch of treats, make sure that when I'm teaching or training on them that it's fair, and I'm always rewarding confidence, and I'm always rewarding their desire to kind of like learn the game or to find relief or things like that. And those things put money into your bank account, so that when you go and compete, or when you say to them, right, I need you just to like, the cattle have just broken out of that paddock, I'm going to jump on and I've got to send you down there at a full sting to stop that gate. that the horse doesn't stick its head down and bronk and go, oh, you didn't warm me up for 15 minutes before I was ready to go.
Yes.
And then when I get down there and the horse is puffing, I pat on him and say, sorry, mate, I didn't, that was kind of a got-to situation.
Yeah.
So, tomorrow we'll play Liberty and kind of rebuild the bank account again a little bit, and that's where the balance comes from.
Well, and it's like people, isn't it? If you at the end of the day, if you've got a mate that's puts a lot of time in, and you feel like is there and doesn't ask a lot of you, and then when they call up and need something, you go, yeah, it's like without hesitation.
Easy.
But if you get that same person that calls up every week and goes, oh, can I borrow this? Oh, can I do that? Do you mind if I, would you come and after a while you start going, how long is that going to go on?
Yeah.
I always give the analogy of the cup of sugar. If your neighbour comes over and asks for a cup of sugar, the first time you go, yeah, no problem. How many times are they going to ask, though, before you're going to go, mate, go buy your own sugar?
Yeah, that's it.
Stop coming and taking mine.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with the horses, isn't it? So I think probably we look at, like Sam gave that analogy of the relationship and the bank account kind of thing. If you've got the relationship account, the only way you can put money into the training account is to directly deposit it over.
You've got to
take something. Yeah, so you've got to deposit it over from the relationship account. And then once a relationship account starts going overdrawn, you can't train anymore. Then you have to look at filling that up. And the whole time, obviously, through the training process, you're still trying to empower the horse to look for synchronization. We talk a lot about safety, comfort, and play, and that was something that was kind of hammered into us fairly hard, and it's congruent all the time, isn't it? Horses, the first thing they will look for if they feel unsafe is safety. They don't care about food, they don't care about comfort, they don't care about play or social influence. They want to feel safe. Once they feel safe, the next thing they'll feel is look for is comfort. And the analogy I always give to explain that is if it's raining in the paddock and the field shelter's at the back of the paddock, and you pull all the other horses in, the horse that's left on his own will stand by the gate calling for his mates, even though he could be in the field shelter. Because the safety is more important than the comfort. Yeah. And then obviously the social influence element is what motivates horses to want to do more than others. Some horses are more playful than others. But really, when it comes down to it, what they all want is to be in harmony with something, isn't it?
Yeah, synchronise.
It's synchronisation, yeah. So trying to put that into your work and go, how can I teach my horse to find harmony with something? Whether that be a task, so it could be jumping, it could be polo, it could be working cows, camp drafting, or it could be a principle-based thing. So like dressage. Can you find harmony with the rider? Can you find harmony with the rider's intention and the rider's weight or whatever it might be? So there's always going to be that filter, but fundamentally when you're training, you are taking from the relationship.
And that can be a bit of a contentious topic, because often people kind of go, oh, am I always adding something, or am I taking something away, or am I sometimes adding something and sometimes taking it away?
Yeah.
And everybody's entitled to that. Like this is that bonding, exuberance, obedience. Someone will generally resonate with one of those three will be more prominent to them than what maybe it is. Like you and I both being fairly practical, we have a rural lifestyle. We realise sometimes there's things that got to get done. That obedience on some aspect is important. Whereas if people are more just a pure recreational person, which doesn't give me any qualms, I'll help anybody if they want some assistance on it. But they might go, the most important thing to me is bonding.
Yeah.
Or the most important thing to me is obedience. So liberty is something that they're really attracted to.
Yeah.
And that's cool. As long as there's a little bit of a balance of all of them, you might find one you're naturally apt to put a bit more in. But I think, we were talking before about having an application to our horsemanship. A little bit of it, and a great analogy perhaps is like a paramedic. Sometimes you can put your horse in a scenario where you're not having to really take that much from them, because in the training scenario in the classroom, someone's just like the best paramedic you've ever seen. They do the resus, they can pass the test, they can do everything. It's right now, like the equivalent of in England, saying to someone, right now you've got to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning to the central nightclub district, and now you've got to be a paramedic when there's drunk people throwing bottles at you and doing it. And can you stay calm and logical and still deliver your job and not have any emotional involvement with what's going on in your environment? And sometimes if we focus purely on, say, the bonding, it's great when the sun's out. It's a beautiful autumn day right here, and it's nice and peaceful and all that comes together. But can we get it to where a partnership is one of those really built, like in a relationship, it's always measured sometimes on when it's not going well rather than when it is going well.
Sure.
And that's where that money in that account sometimes has to just be drawn down and go, can you help me right now?
Absolutely, And I think that's a tough thing sometimes for people to understand. But if you look at it and go, well, who has a better relationship? The person that has the horse that comes running up the paddock every day but never asks anything of the horse, or the horse that when the shit hits the fan and, like you say, you're out on the road or something happens, it could even be simple. It could be that you're at the vet
away from a lorry, or
you're at the vet because the horse needs assistance, or a situation of adversity where the horse, the innate nature of the horse wants to take over, and we know it's in the horse's interest
to do that.
For that, for that to be overridden. Can that horse still act like a partner?
Yeah.
And that probably, I think horsemanship is, for me, I always say horsemanship is, number one, is about building a good relationship with the horse and understanding the nature of horses. But the other side of it is, can you give the horse the tools that they need to not just survive but thrive?
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about there, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people underestimate the fact that horses like to be stimulated. There's this perception that a horse is never happier than when he's in the field, and I just don't believe that's true.
No, I
do
don't
you?
No.
You know, I think it's like that analogy: the grass is always greener. The horse could be in 100 acres, and I guarantee you, he still spends half the time looking over the last hedge.
Yeah, and wish he had 200, or wish he had 5. It's like when people come on a course or they go on holiday, they go, if I just had another week, or if I just had a little bit more land, or if everything was just stretched out a bit more, I'd be more.
That would be better.
I'd be more content.
That would be it then. That's all I need.
But like you just said then, I mean, it is, as much as we try to deny it, we're becoming more of an urban and more of a domestic environment.
Yeah.
And horses, for us to keep horses and still, have, and use them and have fun with them and make them, like a life on 4 legs is bloody good fun.
Yeah.
Like my kids have all grown, my kids have spent a lot of time riding with us, and it's long days sometimes when we go competing and it's dusty and you come home and you stink and your truck's full. But you get up the next day and kind of go, man, if I didn't have horses, I'm not sure what I'd probably be sitting around. I don't know what I'd be doing. So we decide to have them in our lives, but we also go, it is now a very domesticated environment. So they're learning, they're evolving a bit, they're adapting, they're realising that life involves going in horse trucks and standing in small paddocks and learning to be tied up. And we start building a life where they just go, that the wild in the wildlife is starting to kind of filter away a little bit. So we've got to be more. So to take them for a big trot out across the paddock and chase some cows, that adds a little bit of the natural back in them. And taking them for a hunt or jumping something or doing something that's kind of a bit more active and provocative actually makes the horses go, this feels, I don't know what it is, because I've never experienced being wild before, because they've all brought up domestically. They start to get a sense of their metabolism fires up and they start looking better because they've had a bit of a sting, they've had a good run or something like that. There's still those elements that we can provide them and teach them that they can do all of that without ever being scared, without ever being a prey animal and feeling that they've got nothing's trying to kill them. No, nothing's trying to kill them anymore. We got all that under control. So. Yeah.
And I think, what gets missed with horses is just how smart they are.
Sure.
And I think sometimes with, unintentionally, sometimes the way we talk about horses or the way we even train horses is a little bit condescending towards the horse, in that we don't give them enough credit for just how capable they are.
Sure.
We think they're incapable because they're emotional, and that's something that we talk a lot about, is the emotional side of the horse. But it's interesting, and Sam and I, like, where have you taught in the world? So you've taught in, obviously, all over the US, you've taught in England, you've taught in Australia.
I taught in Germany. Where else? I've had a look at a couple of horses before in France. I've never taught there before. I've seen a few little, like, thoroughbred places and stuff in Japan as well, like where they've been up in, where they put them in stables and stuff like that that have elevators and all sorts of things.
Crazy,
it's crazy,
So at least 4 different continents.
Sure.
And I think, that's something that's quite interesting with what we come up against as we travel around and help people, is you're somewhere between, there are a lot of people in the world that think we should just turn all the horses out. Like if you ask anything of a horse, because they can't verbally communicate, there's a an element of make there, or
Yeah.
an element of lack of choice.
Yeah.
Which is ironic,
Or a lack of
which
consent, so to
is
speak.
very strange to us when you truly understand how horses communicate,
Sure.
and we've learned their language, that you realise that they're giving you permission or lack of permission all the time, and it's really obvious to us. But that's fair enough. You know, some people believe that. And then the other side of the coin, or you swing the pendulum the other way, is that some people think we mess around too much with all this relationship stuff and just need to get on with it and
Yeah.
figure out the competition.
Yeah.
And so it can be a little bit of a tough thing to navigate. And I think a lot of the time, these things that we talk about come out of those conversations, don't they? Trying to get people to understand.
And we're both trying really hard to be an extreme middle of the roadist.
Yeah.
You know, like you say, is that when we you know, when you see strategies, often you might hear some horsemen and they get sent a question and they kind of go, and they've taken the approach of make the wrong thing difficult and make the right thing easy, and that's basically their whole filter.
Yeah.
If a horse pins its ears to you in the paddock at feed time,
Must be disrespectful.
put the halter on and work the piss out of it until it wants to stand still and act. And you kind of think, does that strategy work? It kind of does work, and there's some horses that, you know, a little bit more boundaries doesn't go astray. But you also might kind of go, rather than going like, this is the thing for the horse, go, you know, what was your approach like? Are they on the bottom of the pecking order?
Yeah.
Have they actually bit underfed? You know, are they hungry because the survival
There's so
instincts
many
kick in?
factors.
There's so many
Yeah.
factors. And then on the opposite side of things is that rather than going, it's a firmness strategy, it's always got to be a slow and soft strategy. And I've seen some really energetic, high energy, really playful horses been driven absolute crazy because people are just going too slow and trying to break things
sure.
down. And the horse is going, you've turned me into this like shut down introvert because you're boring.
Because that's what you want me to. That's what
right.
you feel I should be.
Your influence, and this is what I've always found. How people learn, right, as a person, how they learn is therefore how they want to teach or how they want to train.
100%.
They
yeah.
go, I like things
Yeah.
delivered slow, with a lot of hand holding, very little concept, just tell me what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
And then they get a horse that's not like that, and they go, but I think that's what he needs. And I was like, well, you might be
Because
right.
that's what you need.
That's what you want.
Yeah.
That's how you like to learn, so that's how you're going to teach. When people kind of go, I feel like you just leave me out there swimming sometimes and don't give me enough information, I was like, well, that's how I like to learn. Give me a little bit of information and let me play around with it until I figure it out.
Yeah.
So I've got to be careful that I don't train my horses or every horse, I'm looking at them individually, or a student the way that I like to learn, because that's going to be natural, and therefore you think everybody else should learn
that way too.
Yeah.
And there's two things that you said there. Yeah. One is, like, when we talk about make the wrong thing difficult and the right thing easy, people here make the wrong thing difficult.
Or make the wrong thing unbearable.
Or unbearable, yeah. And that's not necessarily how that idea was intended.
No.
And firmness depends on the individual, you know, or the level of correction depends on the individual. Like you say, there's some people that need you to be quite strong in your boundaries, and then other people you don't have to set anywhere near as much of that, and horses are no different. But the other thing there is obedience, because obedience, you know, you talked about obedience a minute ago and touched on it again there. I think there's a lot of people, certainly in Europe, that see obedience as suppression.
Or submission.
Yeah, and that submission or that type of obedience is a negative thing. And it's a real fine line, you know, trying to balance that, isn't it? Like you say, when you give that analogy of make the wrong thing unbearable, and you do something like those, that is that you're taking away from that situation.
Yes.
That is suppression.
Yes.
That is taking.
Because we still
may stop
don't
the
like
behaviour.
seeing that.
No, that's the opposite
That
of
is
what we're looking for.
That is not a positive obedience.
No,
It's almost like shutting them down.
Whereas there's like the analogies you gave were perfect, actually, of going, look, you know, I want my horse to feel like he has an opinion. I want him to be as exuberant as possible, but I don't want him to run my children over.
Yeah.
And I do want him to understand that my personal space has to be valued.
Yeah.
And I do want him to understand that sometimes there's got to situations like you've cut your leg half off and I need to get you in the trailer because I've got to take you to a vet. And this is not the time to, you know, take 25 minutes over it. Or, you know, there's situations where we can actually help them, provided they understand how to not allow their instinctual brain to take over.
And also giving people that, like, it's sometimes a terminology thing. It's like pressure.
Yes, yeah.
When people say the word pressure, people are like, oh,
100%.
But I mean, it takes barometric pressure for us to breathe. I mean, pressure's a motivator in every facet. Doesn't matter how. Is there unnecessary pressure? Of course. And is there too much pressure? Of course.
For sure.
But it's still an element of communication. And the other one, when you say, is obedience. You know, like I've got a beautiful old chestnut quarter horse thoroughbred crossmare cherry. And I throw the lead rope on the ground when I'm teaching, and I walk off, and she stands there. And when people come and rub on her, you know, she tucks her nose and they rub on her. And people love her. And the reason that they love her is because she's actually got a great level of obedience.
Yeah.
If you went over to scratch her and she stuck her head against you and knocked you off your feet because she wanted to rub, or every time you put the lead rope down, like she walked off, or she, like, when you're riding her, she dragged your leg against the arena fence or something like that. Straight away, you just kind of go, this, I'm trying to have a relationship with this horse, and it's just like being a bit of a turd about it, or I'm being a turd about it. We haven't got it together. But even when we say, oh, it's about obedience, people go, oh, you know, that sounds a bit submissive or whatever. But when they meet a horse that's got it, they like
They all love them.
They love it.
Yeah.
Because
provided the horse doesn't look shut down.
Yes.
Yeah.
Provided that the horse has found it and it's realised that, you know, if I have, and we've got to have a level of obedience as
100%.
well. We have to be.
The absence of boundaries is not good for anything.
Exactly.
Is it really?
Like we have to have a level of obedience in the sense of knowing when to stop, being obedient with ourselves, or the horse going, "I need you to stop," and we go, "I can do that."
Yeah.
All right. Or now I need you to
that
go.
idea of just one more jump, just one more turn. Yeah.
Or maybe the term disciplined would maybe suit the human element of it, but it's still the same thing. It's still just the same thing.
Yeah.
And often when people find an animal that they're drawn to, they might be bonding, but I'm pretty confident that when those three things are quite even, is what makes an animal attractive.
Yes.
Or their behaviour, or the desire to want to work with somebody that has a nice balance of bonding. They have a nice balance of exuberance. It's not too much. Like they get a bit full on, and you're like, all right, just tone the jokes down a bit. And obedience. It's a pretty simple formula that I think, you know, a lot of people can take away from. I think so.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's an interesting, like you say, with dogs are usually a great analogy, because people that have a naughty dog, or I shouldn't say naughty, have a dog that has behaviours that maybe
misguided.
Let's call it a misguided dog. Yeah, they see a dog that behaves well, it knows how to be appropriate. Is probably the right word, isn't it? Like knows how to be playful,
read the situation.
Yeah, and they go, oh, why can't my dog be like that? And you go, well, it's because it takes a balance of, you know, being able to set boundaries and be firm, but not be so firm that the dog becomes a slave. You know, but equally allowing enough play drive that the exuberance stays, but not so much that you lose the willingness and the obedience. It's not easy, is it?
No, it's not easy.
And it's exactly the same with these horses.
And we're trying to do that as instructors. We're trying to get, you know, we can be a little bit playful and send somebody and tell them to, like, you know, ride and yee-haw, but we're still doing it with a filter of going, I know that you're ready, you know, we're not sending you over the limit here.
No.
And we can have a bit of a joke with them, and we can do it. And sometimes these are strategies just to get people to relax their sphincter and have a laugh, do you know what I mean? Rather than just going, we're not saving babies here, this is just horsemanship, you know what I mean? Like enjoy it for what it is and get on. So we're trying to use a filter of that with our teaching too, you know, which you do also very well. So it makes it more attractive to come and ride with people like this, that you feel that you're not being judged, but you're going to get pushed. Yeah, you know what I mean.
A challenge in the right
challenge,
way.
and we're just sharing ideas of how we approach it, so that we get that balance right with our horses and with our students as well. So
yeah, and there's two sides of it as well, isn't there? Usually, like you say, there's the person that is looking more for bonding and more for that softer relationship, and they have a horse that goes, I don't care about that. I want to be stimulated. I need something to think about because I'm bored and I'm smart and I'm extroverted and I'm capable, and we have to try and sort of bring the exuberant element out of that person a little bit and go, hey, you know, look, we don't have to be so serious about this. Everything's fine. And then the other side of it is the serious competitive rider that has a very introverted, submissive horse that will do anything they ask, but probably with a little bit of tension and worry. And we have to go, hey, you know what, maybe you could just like keep all that kind of see if we can bring this horse's confidence up a little bit and just slow it all down.
And I think that's where, like, you know, you just brought up that, you know, when we talk about responsive is a great term in horses. You know, all I'm looking for is every time I ask the horses to do something, I want them to either respond or to relax.
Yeah.
And like having an aid or an intent or whatever that the horse goes, that's a relax intent, and that's a response intent. The opposite to that is ignore, which is often the shutdown, or the term you hear a lot these days, which I really hate, is to desensitize.
Yeah.
I'd rather say, are they confident or not confident? Because when you're desensitizing, you're basically saying to them, that doesn't mean anything. And something should always mean something.
Yeah.
It should either mean be confident or relax, or then respond.
Yeah.
And my definition of really response is when the horse's sensitivity and their confidence are even. If you've got a horse that's really sensitive but not confident, then they're kind of more of a reactive horse. And if they're kind of really confident but they've had the sensitivity knocked out of them, then they're dull or a bit suppressed or whatever that we would talk about. So responsive is one of those things that is also a fairly good indicator of how your relationship is.
For sure.
If a horse is responsive, it's usually done positively and it's done appropriately to the amount of pressure that you ask for. And then when they go, when they give you an opposition, you go, I need to respond to that with a bit more feel, or like trying to read when you're out.
Yes.
And let the horse know that you're trying to be responsive and trying to be more relaxed as a rider.
Yeah.
Or as a handler. So.
Well, and there's always, with responsiveness, there's always an element of yield, and there's always an element of seeking something, or should be seeking something.
You're going to talk about the stages of responsive.
Yeah. So we talk about the innate nature of horses will mean that they will try and flee or fight when they feel pressure that they don't understand. So they get caught up in the fence, or they pull back on when they're tied up, or they buck when the first time a saddle goes on, or something happens where the horse gets triggered and their innate response is to fight or to flee. And that can happen environmentally. That's why they run over the top of people in situations like that. But the next stage, so let's say you take a young horse that's never had anything done with him. You've built a relationship, and you've built, the horse understands that you're not going to hurt him, you can touch him all over, he gets friendly, he comes and says hello every time you see him. And your next thing is to go, okay, well, look, if anything happens to this horse, I probably need to be able to lead him onto the lorry and be able to take him to the vet. So it will probably be in his interest, not just mine, to teach him how to be handled, and there's going to be an element of yield to that that's going to fight against their innate tendency. So you start to teach the horse to yield to the halter, and he understands how to come off the halter, he understands that he can pick his legs up and still feel safe, not feel like he wants to fight, not feel like he wants to flee. The next thing is to get the horse to seek relief. So not only now are they going away from something that feels a little bit uncomfortable, so they feel the pressure of the halter in little moments in time, but towards something that feels good. And Sam and I talk about this all the time with responsiveness. Can you not just get the horse to yield, but can the horse seek relief? And this applies to simple situations like that, as well as right the way up to, when you're riding your lateral manoeuvres, when you're teaching horses to jump, you want the horse to seek something positive. So the way the analogy I give is I say, in the moment you get what you want, does the horse find what he needs? And if the horse has a need for relief, or a need to find something that feels good, that's what you have to give them in the moment. In the moment they piaffe, in the moment they jump, in the moment they commit to turning left, in the moment they come off the halter, whatever it might be, that is the moment the horse has to find what he's looking for, rather than just go away from the situation that you presented. And that's not always, it's a simple thing to understand, but it's not always an easy thing to...
And that's really sums up what we really do.
Yeah.
Is those things of like stage 1 would be fight and flight, stage 2 would teach the horse to yield, and 3 would be seek relief on the simplest of... But what we're doing is we're actually teaching the horse how to learn. So like our specialty in a sense is the mind and the emotional side of things. We understand the body stuff as well, but I've seen a lot of horses that be 20 years old that can do passage and piaffe and all this. But as soon as they learn something new, they're back to fight and flight. They might be 20 years old. Whereas if we get a young horse and we teach them that basically we're going to maintain pressure until the horse sort of just enough to where he doesn't fight or fly and he starts to learn to yield, that by the 3-year-old year and by their 4-year-old year, every time you teach them something new, fight and flight doesn't enter their mind anymore.
Yes.
You've actually trained the brain and not the body.
Yeah.
And then once
they've learned how to learn.
And they've learned how to learn. And once they go, this fight-flight instinct thing is not helping me in this environment or as a learner in this situation. And then they go, right, now I'm not scared and I'm not mad or I'm not having a go at you or anything.
Yeah.
What do you want me to do? Well, now I want you to yield, and I want you to yield either using steady pressure or I want you to yield using rhythmic pressure without getting reactive or anything. And then the horses go, okay, you can put a feel there, and I know to go there. You can put a feel on with your leg, or you can put a feel on it. And they're still, in the yield stage, they're moving away from pressure. And then, like you just said, when they get to stage 3, they start working out, if I head towards that jump, and I'm thinking about going over the jump, and you take the pressure off, not once they've jumped, but when they're thinking about going over the jump, or when they're thinking about going in the horse truck, or when they're thinking about hooking onto the mechanical flag. Now what's happened is that you've empowered them to go, you don't even really need me to tell you what to do. I'll just be there to make a correction.
Yeah.
If you're not quite on track.
Yeah.
Like great stock dog trainers, they let the instinct of the dog work the sheep. And the only time they'll make a command is when the dog needs to be corrected.
Yes.
That's the people that are using stage 3. They're going, when the dog's doing what he's meant to, he gets relief.
Tell him where
from
not
me.
to be.
Yes,
rather than where to be.
And that's a hard thing in the horse industry for people to break if they've come through, say, like a pony club culture.
Yeah, because it's always tell them where to be, what to do,
and
how
pressure
to do it,
stays
when
on
to do it.
keep them doing something, and it only comes off when you want them to stop doing something.
Yeah.
Kick. As soon as they stop, the horse stops. We use an approach of, we put pressure on to give them information, not for punishment. Once the horse is doing it, we take pressure off while they're doing it.
Yeah.
And they start going, oh, if I keep doing this, we're in harmony, and you're fine and I'm fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know it took me a long time to realise that there's no wrong answer to the horse. So you go, why is he fighting and why is he fleeing? Because he's looking for something that feels good.
Yeah.
It's the
and
same
that might
thing.
be his paddock and not me. Or,
that's it. Yeah. They fight and flee, or the innate nature of the horse, or the prey animal side of the horse, whatever you want to call it, takes over to look for the same thing.
Yeah.
That if you teach them correctly, they will find through yielding and looking for connection with us.
Yeah.
So you're still giving the horse what he needs, just in a way that's additive to the partnership, additive to the environment they live in, additive to training, additive to competition, whatever it might be, without it coming through something that might take away from all that.
Yeah.
And that's what I've, and you helped me with this probably more than anyone. I always say, like, the person that gave me the most help, took me from a good-hearted horse lover to a half-decent horseman was Pat. Obviously, it was quite surprising how little, or I felt, how little I knew until I knew what I didn't know.
Oh, it's the same,
yeah. And then, but what the person that really helped me understand what he was talking about, probably on a much deeper level, was you. And it's things like this, that concept you have of active, neutral, and quit. Sam came to the UK probably 7 or 8 years ago now, and basically just looked at everybody and went, you guys just need to understand these 3 words: active, neutral, quit. Active means you present the horse with information, and jump in here if I get any of this wrong. Neutral means I'm pleased with what you're doing, please keep doing that. And quit means game over. And he said everybody here is active, 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 quit. And then they wonder why the horse quits on them. There was no neutral.
Yeah.
And to put that into your riding, what you're doing is you're teaching the horse to find harmony, find synchronization,
while doing something,
find relief, however you want to call it, while doing something. Yeah. And the idea of pressure, I think there's still this idea, because people have seen the wrong thing difficult and the right thing easy done in the wrong way, or done in an exaggerated way to where the wrong thing's unbearable. But now if you put any pressure, they think, but the horse didn't really have a choice, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're fighting that all the time. And I think the reality is pressure to horses, from horses, is information.
Yeah.
Isn't it? You know? And that is what gets misunderstood.
Yeah. I mean, I'd seen it in the...
And so we try and present... Sorry, I was going to say, we try and present pressure as information rather than a punishment or a criticism. But go on, yeah.
But like you say, is that when often people think pressure, they've seen a bad phase sequence. They've seen someone go from too gentle to too firm too quick.
Yes.
And I hate that as much as anybody else.
100%.
And when people go, you know what I don't like about some of this natural horsemanship concepts is this idea of phases. And, I won't mention any names, but I'd seen a few demos where people had in their theory, had kind of bagged that concept. And then they went out and they said, what I do is I go along and, I lift my life up and then I pick up a little bit of sand, from the arena. And I was like, well, there's phase 1 and there's phase 2. I mean, what are we talking about here? I mean, just because you've made because you
don't get firmer and you've made the phases closer together.
Yes. And if people come from a place of already having great self-awareness and strong intent and the ability to control themselves, they can often do it really well. But some people like you and I that come through it, we have to learn to accidentally, bang a bit too hard and a bit too soft because it's not something that's not natural.
Yeah.
So you've got to go, it's like saying to somebody, right, if you do this and you make that really horrible sound on the guitar, if you just hold it like this, that won't happen. And people are going,
yeah.
Like I can see what you're saying, but I just can't do that yet.
Yes, yeah.
So,
and you're going to swing the pendulum in the learning process. You're going to do a bit too much.
Of course.
And you're going to do nowhere near enough.
Of course, yeah. And then, like you said, it's just, then getting to people going, right, well, the pressure's fine as long as when they're committed to what it is that you're doing, that you give them that neutral. And another part of that aspect is I used to say that neutral needs to be well done. And well done means, you must be happy with this, I'll keep doing it.
Yeah.
Whereas most people have taught their horse that well done means we're done.
Yeah.
Right? And we're done is the quit part.
Yeah.
So when people say well done and the horse goes, that must mean well done.
Good boy.
Well, we're done. I'm getting them wrong now. When they say well done, they mean we're done. That if you could say to somebody, that is, if your kid's doing something, gymnastic on the grass and you go, that is great. They should automatically go, I'll do it again.
Yes.
They want to show you again.
Not sweet,
going,
that's me done.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Like, where's the lemonade? I want to sit on the veranda for a bit,
Yeah.
But it's but we've actually trained them that.
Yes.
We've taught them that, and we've trained people in a sense that that's why they're not getting much out of their horse. And then when they add more active and don't find the neutral, then they feel like they're making it harder on the horse. And it's only because they just haven't taught the horse how to seek relief, like you said before.
Yeah.
That's all.
And I think that translates right into how we, the idea of asking horses for anything. I think people have seen horses be overfaced, overpressured, suppressed in different ways, either, recreationally and through competition, over the years. And so now we've kind of gone the opposite way and go, well, what right do we have to ask horses to do anything? Let's just let them exist.
Sure.
And that will fulfill all their needs.
Sure.
Which is just wrong.
Sure.
And whilst the idea is for the horse, it becomes not for the horse.
No.
Because that's not actually what fulfills all their needs.
No.
Just like people.
Yeah.
Horses have a need to be stimulated mentally, emotionally, physically, even just for their own well-being.
Absolutely.
I know a nutritionist lady, a friend of mine in the UK, she deals with lots of horses with metabolic issues, and she always says, when was the last time this horse cantered for 15 or 20 minutes? And the answer is almost never. And you go, so now a horse is getting physically sicker because we can't fulfill their physical need, and why would that be no different for mental and emotional?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
and like you were...
But we do have to think about how we ask these things.
Yes, that's right.
That's the other, and that's kind of what we...
And then your pressure is going to be relative to your aptitude or your altitude, like how high do you want to go, is going to bring that in. And like I've just made the transition back to competition after 18 years, and in the last 2 years my challenge is going, now how do I find the neutral when I'm at a competition at full flight chasing a cow? Because it looks great when you see a lot of the horsemanship videos and they're walking around in an arena, real slow, picking up a soft feel and placing a foot there. And they go, and they go, look at the feel, it's great. Now go full tilt.
Yes.
And have the same level of feel. And you can get some elements of that in a slower, methodical, pattern-driven style of horse training. But you kind of have to go there a bit to learn how to find that neutral there.
Yes.
And sometimes when people find those resistances, or like Craig Johnson had a great saying, is to ride for the resistance. Like go out there and go and find it. Yeah. And then help the horse get through it so that their actual comfort zone slowly just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. That we've got to give ourselves permission that it's all right to kind of, go, how do I can find neutral when I've got control of the situation, and if something plays up and I get all the students to stop and I show them how to fix it. But when you're in the moment, you're giving yourself 45 seconds in a competition to kind of go, is my neutral that good? And when I come home, in my pre-season, am I doing things to where my horses go, oh, yeah, that's all right, I can deal with that. And you're doing it progressively and you're building them up. Like a bodybuilder or whatever, someone's fitness would take 6 weeks or whatever to get from reasonably fit to fairly fit. You got to think about the emotional side of horses and the mental side of horses as a muscle, and it's something that you've got to break down and grow and break down and grow until the horse actually goes, I'm as fit emotionally as I am physically
fit. Yeah. It's interesting, and I think in the horsemanship world, you hear the term "get the horse's mind" a lot, don't you?
Yep.
And very rarely, though, get the horse's emotions. And again, that's not a criticism. It's just, as a rule, that's what you hear.
We're still figuring that out.
I think people are still figuring that out.
Yeah.
And like you say there, it's with these competition horses. I think, I grew up. I didn't compete a great deal when I was young, but I grew up in a competition environment. Where the people around had nice horses, and I got farriers in my family, and grooms and trainers, and like sort of a horsey family. And so when I got into this, I remember the first time I sort of saw some horsemanship done really well, and I thought, well, you know what, I don't know what that is, but I know that's something I need to know. But my idea was always to apply it to those horses, because I always felt like those horses were always there was plenty of people out there that could help just recreational riders, someone that didn't have a goal, someone that didn't have an aspiration, or a horse that didn't have a true job.
Yeah.
But there was very few people out there without taking the job away that could help the horse that had a job.
Yeah.
And so some of that, or trying to translate this to go, okay, well, how are we going to actually ask a lot and have the horse not feel like it's a lot?
Yeah.
And a lot of that is about emotional fitness, isn't
Yeah.
it? It's, trying to understand how to get the horse's emotions. So much so that you can ask a lot and they just don't feel like it's something that ever really flaps them.
No. And then on the other hand, it can be the opposite. As you have like race horses and eventers and things that they spend a lot of time galloping and finding. The biggest thing I think, just for people, if they've got any going, well, how do you guys even get near that? One of the great formulas is rhythm, relaxation, and contact. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you take a thoroughbred, it's learnt to actually become quite emotionally fit at the gallop.
Yeah.
As soon as they're galloping,
They
find that
okay.
rhythm and relaxation, and they know that they're 5 lengths off the rail.
Yeah.
And they do. For this half a mile or this furlong or whatever, that they're at this speed, and then they slow it back. They're great. But then you try to get them to walk.
Yes.
And they don't have rhythm and relaxation in the walk.
100%.
And so they're emotionally scattered at the walk and emotionally fairly stable and relaxed at the gallop. Whereas recreational riders, they've got rhythm and relaxation at the walk.
Yes.
And then it wavers at the trot. And then
Yeah.
it's gone at the canter, and it's completely out of control at the gallop.
Yeah.
So if we get out, you and I, we trotted out the other day to get some cattle, and we just get into a trot, and the first little bit, they feel a little bit forward, but rather than shutting them down, we just, direct them through to some different countryside and up and down ridges. And after a good couple of mile, like 2 mile or something, the trot starts to find a rhythm,
Yeah.
a relaxation, and a contact.
Yes.
They get connected to the speed and the countryside and what they're doing, and then we walk. And so the next day we go out for a ride, they start locking into that rhythm, relaxation, and contact.
Yeah.
And so patterns, every time we move them in a leg yield, or we roll their hindquarters away, or we back them up, we just hang in there until they've got rhythm, relaxation, and contact. And often what that does is that builds a little bit of mental,
Yeah.
but primarily what it actually does is starts training them to emotionally just be okay with where they're at.
Yeah.
And that
to
starts
look
to
for
build.
that. Yeah. And like you say, really, the key to the performance horses is to teach them to keep have rhythm, relaxation, and contact when things become faster and more intense.
Yes.
Yeah. And Mike Bridges was another kind of main mentor of mine, and you've been over and studied with him in Oregon as well.
It.
And Mike's phenomenal. He's a true master with the bridle horses. He trains cow horses, and he always says it's very easy to make things look good going slow.
Yeah.
It's not so easy to make things look good going fast.
Yeah.
And but it's interesting what you say there about the race horses, because a lot of the time, like you say, we see them on the telly, and we see that a lot of horses have trouble at the start, and they're quite stressed and upset for whatever reason. And for sure, some of those horses are worried about running, but some of them are looking to get to the run. They're looking to get to the gallop, because that's where the relief is. So we see him and go, oh, he's stressed about the fact that he's going to gallop. And actually, a lot of the time, he's stressed about the fact that he's not yet galloping
from the gallop.
Yeah. Which is so. It's this human element of it, and go, well, now there's plenty that you could criticise the racehorse industry for. I'm not saying that we're sitting here going, it's no problem. You guys just don't understand it. But I'm just saying, from a horse behaviour perspective, even if we know there's something wrong, sometimes we don't always look at it from the horse's point of view.
Yeah.
And like you say, sometimes there are horses that the ones that don't want to run usually don't run.
No.
They don't want to go and they think they'll stop and they'll back up. And the ones that are looking to gallop settle, and you'll see that as soon as they get let go or the rider comes off them or something happens, they just
Head
go
down,
around the track.
licking their lips,
Yeah.
bowling
Yeah.
along. Yeah.
Because they found what they're looking for.
Yeah. But then we've got to manage to do that ourselves as well as horse people
100%.
and riders and things.
100%.
And that's, if I credit Sean in the last, couple of years, or it's always been a little bit in your nature, but as your comfort zone grows and you can, you handle bigger groups of students and you can handle more speed and still be real playful and left brain even when the pressure's high, that even horses just embody that. They start to embrace it. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like when you meet someone that's the crazier things get, the more they're just like, yeah, let's go. You just sort of think, this is all right. Whereas if everyone around you is just going, oh, freaking out, you start building, you almost start getting into a bit of a pattern of going speed and pressure and all that sort of stuff is bad because I just don't comprehend it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in the UK we have that a lot because we don't have a lot of space to ride. I come down here to Western Australia, you could ride to the bloody coast from here,
sure.
Which is however many hundreds of kilometres away. And yet we just don't have that. So we don't really get many opportunities to spend time at the gallop.
Yeah.
Or people don't, you know. And like you say, when we go down the New Forest, that's one of the things. Not always, depends on the group of students and the level they're all at, but that can be one of the things that people have trouble with.
Good boy.
Good boy, Dash. Is speed.
Yeah.
Because like you say, and I think as well, when people feel power from horses or feel energy from horses, they feel like something's wrong.
Sure.
Don't they?
Yep.
In that moment where that energy comes up, they go, oh, I feel like I want to close it all down.
Yeah.
And actually learning to be at that level of intensity yourself and know that everything's all right.
And not ever experience speed without adrenaline.
Without adrenaline.
When you say to people, let's go for a gallop, and someone's heart rate comes up, I go, what is it that bothers you? And they go, because they've never felt a gallop without being out of control.
Yes.
Not feeling like they're in charge of the acceleration and the horse is in charge of the deceleration.
100%.
Like the moment that you go, let's stop galloping, without even using your reins, that your horse is just dialing back.
Yes.
Which is all teachable, through patterns and teaching horses certain spots where they hit the stop or riding to the fence and learning after they've had a big run, they gallop across a pen and then you sit them at the fence and they ping around a little bit. You might have to sit there for 45 minutes, but if you wait till they go, oh, okay, so I can learn to be energetic, or one of the terms I always say is not to confuse activity for achievement.
Yeah.
Sometimes horses, you think they're overachieving, or they're being overactive and not achieving a lot. Whereas when you watch a horse that looks a little more collected, his mind's on the job and his emotions don't overrun him, he might not look like he's doing much, but he's very effective. He's very efficient, and often great horse people are like that.
100%.
I didn't. You look like you weren't doing anything. It's like, sweet.
That's what we're looking for.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. If
Yeah.
I'm out there having to do too much here and there, which sometimes you do have to do,
sometimes
people go, you must
way.
be achieving a lot. It's like, well, I'm being very active, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm being, I'm achieving.
Achieving.
So, and knowing that you can send horses even out online and encourage them to really go, and then when they find that relaxation and they come back, they start going, the speed is fun, or the pressure is fun, or the willingness to kind of go and do something becomes fun.
Because the horses are the same, and particularly in the UK, our horses, as a rule, live in small paddocks relative to the world. When you go around the world and you see how horses live, you realise that our horses are very confined.
Yeah.
And so they never get time to run.
No.
And then so people send them out and ask for a bit more speed, wonder why the horse gets emotional, feel like they've asked too much, or maybe blown the horse up, when actually really all the horse needs to do is just figure out how
First time he's been out of a canter in 12 months. yeah.
Or got past 4 steps, 4 strides of gallop in his lifetime, because his paddock runs out by the time he gets down there or something. And it's interesting.
Yeah, but the concept of, seeking relief, just back to that to sort of finish off, and like if you were just for the folks here to give like a scenario, we talked about fight and flight, which is their first stage, and that's often what we just really covered there, is that when we get to speed, say at the walk, you go, my horse actually seeks relief.
Yes.
But you get to the trot and they're back in a bit fight to flight.
Yeah.
They're not quite yielding very well at the trot, and then they're not seeking relief at the trot.
Yeah.
And then you cure that, and then you get to the canter, and all of a sudden the horse is in fight and flight in the canter.
Yeah.
And once you've really expanded and contracted and expanded and contracted, the horse goes, actually don't got really fight and flight left anymore, and then you've got an incredibly family friendly, safe, go have fun kind of horse, which people kind of want to
ready to learn.
You can breed that to an
Yeah.
extent. Some horses come out like that, and others need you to give them a lot more assistance. But a quick scenario would be if I had a young horse and I bought him off the corner in my arena, and I had a cone on the quarter line across the arena, and I did a little bit of a leg yield, but he was a bit resistant to my leg, and then when he got to that cone, he balked at it because he was still in fight and flight. I did that for a few days to where he got confident. The second stage would now be yielding, where the horse starts to go, okay, if I get over to the cone in a leg yield, I'll get relief.
Yeah.
But you've still got to kind of like will them over there with your leg. They're still in the second stage of yielding. They're moving over there, but they're moving away from the pressure of your leg
Yes.
until they get to the cone. Well, after a couple of weeks, they start working out that leg yield from the corner of your arena to the quarter line where the cone is where relief is. There's a transition happens where mentally and emotionally they come out the corner, and you almost have to tell them, not yet, not yet, wait, now go. And they actually suck you over there to the cone. They put everything they've got into it, which is where the exuberance and that element comes out, because the horse is now going, I know that if I get there, that I'm going to get relief.
Yes.
So it's gone from, they're a bit scared to stick on the rail, they balk at the cone. Over a couple of weeks now, they're getting to the cone, but they're only getting there because they're being motivated by moving away from the pressure of your leg or your stick. And then when they start transitioning into like the third step of responsive, is they start seeking relief, which a high-level show jumper seeks the jump, a high-level cow horse seeks the cow. A high-level Liberty horse seeks a pattern. You know, send it out and it knows that I run around that horse and I come back. They start mentally learning where the pressure is and where it's not. And then all of a sudden they're just you've got
where
a
the
horse that's
information
asking
is.
you tons of questions because they know where the information is, or what I should do with this information.
And that synergy they find. It's cool. And one of the things just hearing you talk there that you really helped me understand was patterns weren't just things the horse could learn. So like circles or stay by the fence or whatever it might be, patterns translate forward and backwards in the behaviour. So we had this with lead changes. I had a horse that she'd get a little bit emotional when she changed. Every time my leg would come on to change her, she just felt tense. And lead changes weren't natural to her. I'd messed up my timing a little bit, and so it was something that changed her emotions. And so what Sam had me do was go, right, look, ask her to change, but don't take your leg off. Just wait until she'd come down to the walk, so my leg was still on, and just have her really blow out and relax. And when you feel her emotionally change, then release on that. And what happened was because she started to figure out how to relax after, she started to relax during and then she stayed relaxed before. So patterns actually are about forwards and backwards in the sequence, not just about teaching a horse a thing. And the emotional connection to the age, that was something that I'd not really, you can release on a thought and you can release on a feeling. So we release on the mind. Oh, my horse thought about it, but we don't always necessarily release on the emotions. And the emotions are a big factor with stuff like that. But that was really interesting.
So it comes back to when I take pressure off, did I reward response? Or did I reward relaxation? And often what people do is because they felt the horse attempt to move, or they pick up their rein, or they do something, the horse moves very subtly, and they release. But sometimes they release because the body did something. But the horse was still a bit reactive. He sort of jumped out there. So what they do is they think, oh, I put on too much pressure. Rather than going, well, I'm just going to gently keep that pressure on until the horse goes, oh, it's not really chasing me or anything. And all of a sudden they become more responsive, which is more balancing sensitivity and confidence. And you release, and pretty quick, the thing that they considered to be fearful now is just information.
It's good.
It's just, and it's something that they go, I just didn't understand. It's not that you were too hard or that I was too scared. I just didn't understand. And once they've got information, the responsiveness gets stronger, the relaxation gets stronger. And like Sean was just saying, we helped each other with a lot of stuff last summer about going, do our aids have an influence on the behaviour as much as just on the feet and on the body. And when you start realising that you can keep a leg on until a horse relaxes and take it off, the next time you put a leg on, the emotional response is relax, and then the aid says whatever. Swing the shoulder, move the hip a bit more. But the initial response to that aid needs to be a calm, either like relaxed or emotionally connected to the aid, and just kind of going, I'm doing it, but the brace in my rein or the brace in my leg is because not because the horse doesn't understand how to move away.
Yes.
But it's still got this. Oh, the leg.
There's a negative emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read a lot of classical books, mainly through Mike's influence. You know, his reading list is huge, and so it's working my way through them. A lot of classical dressage books, and essentially they all have a similar filter in terms of their sequence or their style of training might change, but there's a similar filter in that what they're trying to develop is this synchronization or harmony with the horse, build true collection engagement.
Yeah.
And you summed it up, you know, perfectly a few years ago, where you just went, it's about the mental, emotional, and physical collection coming together.
Yeah.
And what we see, I should say what I see, and I think you see a lot of the time, is physical collection being inhibited by the mind and the emotions of the horse, rather than just the body. You know, and Mike he always says there's two kinds of braces. There's social braces and training braces. You know, training braces are the physical element. You know, so what is the horse physically ready for or physically capable of, or are they being physically inhibited by the rider or the bit or the saddle or the whatever? But a lot of the time, it's the braces that people hit are mental and emotional, and they think they're physical, eh?
And then they use physical aids to try to fix the
mental. And then they fix
mental.
the physical with the mental and emotional, rather than teaching the horse to change the
Yeah.
mental and emotional through the physical aid. You know, and
he's bothered by my leg, so you just got to keep cantering him. You know what I mean? And just hope he you know.
Yeah. Or the horse
He's a
just
bit fresh.
holding a lot of tension in the collection, when actually none of it is the physical tension is because of how he feels,
Yeah.
rather than what he does.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it's interesting.
It is, and the one thing on the lead change thing, making sure that I give credit where it's due. There, I've come up with a few concepts just in the last few years about this idea of these relaxed legs. I'm going to post a few videos on a 4-stage sequence that I've just started to put together, and it's probably a lot of things that you hear Sean and I talk about. This is not new. I mean, if any of you guys have heard of Marco Pierre White, you know, he's a probably one of the most famous chefs in the world. He says we're no longer in the era of invention, just refinement.
Yeah.
When someone says I've made this new dish or I've made this
true.
It's just a better. It's maybe more.
Our job's polishing the stone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with these relaxed leg things, I've heard it called maintain leg. But what we try to bring is, are you recognising how that aid could influence the mental and the emotional? Whereas often people are using it just as a training aid on how to do it. And the lead change one I actually got from a horseman called Trevor Carter. He's got actually a little video on it on YouTube. Have a look at it about doing the lead change and keeping the leg on till relaxation. So that's where I'd got that information from. But then I've applied the relaxed leg concept to using both legs and teaching horses how to actually relax with leg pressure, even slow down with leg pressure, so that when you accidentally clamp or you do something just for your balance, that the horse has a dial down concept. But that's a whole other topic. But all of these aids can really be it brings your awareness about when I release, am I releasing on how the horse thinks, how they feel, and how they're acting, rather than just taking the pressure off because of how they acted or how you got them to move.
100%.
So yeah.
And we got a couple of courses coming up in the UK this summer, eh, Sam?
We do.
So we got an advanced New Forest clinic. So we do a clinic out in the New Forest National Park, which we've taught together. How many times have you been down there?
Oh, that would be
3 or 4.
No, it'd be 2.
2.
Yeah.
So you've been twice down there with us.
Twice, yeah.
So this will be your 3rd year.
Yeah.
Which would be good. And that really is all about utilising the forest to develop the horse. So we're talking more about horse development there, and how to utilise that space to go farther, be faster, be more precise, how to get your horse confident, riding and speeding a herd, looking at undulation, looking at water, how to cover water, cross water, build the horse's confidence, all that type of stuff. So that's a really, and fundamentally what we're talking about with all of this stuff is apply psychology to training.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell, isn't it?
Outside
How
of
do
the
you
school.
apply psychology to training? Yeah. Outside of the school or even inside of the school. And so that's what we're going to be looking at down in the New Forest. And then we've got what we've called an advancing refinement clinic, which is going to be, it's a week long. It's at my place in Toaster, Northamptonshire. And we're going to look at groundwork and riding for that. So we're going to be refining your communication on the ground, refining your communication in the saddle, and looking at some of all these aspects that we've spoken about and teach you actually how to apply them. You'll see my new business name's changed. It's Applied Horsemanship, and that's what it's about.
Yeah.
How do you apply this stuff? You know, there's enough information out there talking about it, but how do you actually apply it to a real life situation, or a real training situation, or a real partnership situation, and have the horse feel empowered to want to come with you?
Yeah.
So thank you for this time, mate.
Oh, you bet.
I know we're just about ready to shoot off to the airport now, so I just wanted to get this time in with Sam before we leave, because it's important. He's got a lot to offer, and we hope to see you there. So if you do want more information on the clinics, please get in touch via my website, Sean Coleman Horseman, and we hope to see you there.
Yeah, and if you're not following Sean, get on. I mean, this is we live and breathe this type of stuff. We're always trying to find better ways to improve, and very addicted to riding and trying to do things better. So yeah, if you guys have the same level of passion, and you got a bit of an interest of applying, you know, performance type maneuvers and all those sorts of things, with the combination of understanding the real horsemanship aspect of the mental and the emotional, then if you're over in Europe or in the UK, then you got to go and spend some time with Sean, because it'll open your eyes. So thanks very much, mate.
Appreciate it.
And hope you enjoyed your time in Oz.
Yeah, it's been
we'll
awesome.
See you guys in England in the summer.
Cool. All right.
Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
mate. Thank you.